And welcome back to another week at Beyond the Trailer Park, folks. Normally, we have somebody in the chat who's actually in the studio this week, and Morgan is not. So we've done a bi-skeptical swap out, and good evening, Trav.
Hello. Oh, it's just now. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah, last time I was on the show, a few times I was going by Trav, but then I had somewhat of a major gender dysphoria episode, and Trav became way too masculine, so now I go by Tris. Okay. Either way, I'm still happy to be here.
Excellent. Well, we're happy to have you here too.
Yes.
And of course, all the way from Pennsylvania as usual. Good evening, Beth.
Good evening.
And Tris is going to make me look bad. They're in the chat and in the studio.
Yes, simultaneously. I figured just if it'd be cool to like chat with whoever else is in the comments section. If we ever get anyone else in the comments section.
I know. Sometimes we do. Sometimes we. Hopefully, we'll avoid any trolls this evening.
Yeah.
Hello.
Yeah.
Tonight would not be a good night for trolls.
So somebody's trying to crawl up my leg again. Hello, Mr. Cute Kitten. Say hello to everyone.
Oh.
Adorable. Yeah. Oh, I want to go. Get me out of here. And for those of you listening to the podcast, you're just going to have to go over to YouTube and look at the bloody adorable kitten I have. Sorry.
Yes, now we get the fawn over Dub's kitten. My kitten is now a cat and weighs about, we'll say 22 pounds.
Oh, boy.
Yeah, he's a moose. He might pop in. He's been wanting his nightly cuddly play pet me mommy attention, which is really weird because he could really care less.
Yeah. And before we get started too, and I know a couple of people have already mentioned this on my Facebook somewhere. No, I am not currently high, and no, I am not smoking weed at this moment. Just so you know.
Darn.
I know. Everybody will be like, "What the hell's wrong with you?" I don't like weed. I don't have a problem with it. I just don't like it myself. Never really have. So kudos to everybody who loves weed, and go smoke all you want of it. Eat as many brownies as you want.
Ah, that's right. I was like, why would you be smoking weed? But then it just dawned on me. Duh.
Yes. Earlier this week, we legalized recreational weed usage in Canada. So anybody can go and order some legal weed and smoke it. So there we go. There are some restrictions, of course. And stupidly, because we have a dumb fuck for a premier, Ontario was supposed to, you were supposed to be able to go and buy it at a store. Doug Ford, who ironically has a reputation for being a drug dealer.
Does he smoke crack like his brother?
Probably. I know people who they don't want to call him by his name because he's an asshole, so they call him drug fraud. But he decided that Ontario shouldn't have physical stores. So you can only order it online in Ontario so far, which will probably only last as long as drug fraud does, which hopefully isn't very long. But anyway, I digress. So no, you're not going to see clouds of weed smoke here, but for all of you who love it, congratulations. Toke them if you got them. It's all good. But I had a couple of people like, "Ooh, what's Beyond the Trailer Park going to be like this week?" Now that I'm like, sorry to disappoint. But anyway, it's been a bit of a weekend. I know yesterday when I got up and I started scrolling my news feed, and I all of a sudden went, "Holy fucking shit!" I can only imagine what Tris felt like. So, Tris, do you want to fill us in?
Well, to be honest, my first thought was, shit, it's way too early in the morning for this. I haven't had my first cup of coffee yet, which is pretty much par for the core for the Trump administration. In fact, I know this couple. They've made a rule never to check their phones first thing in the morning. And I'm thinking, maybe they're onto something. But yeah, for those who have no idea what we're talking about, the New York Times released an article Sunday morning. I'm looking up here, not because I'm distracted, but because the cat's on Deb's shoulders, and so I don't want to be like, yeah. Oh,
I know. He's playing peekaboo behind my head.
Peekaboo, I see you. Anyway,
yeah, back to nasty shit.
Yeah. According to the New York Times, the Trump administration is planning on a new attack on trans people. This time, they want to redefine gender as a biological, immutable condition determined by genitalia at birth, which would exclude transgender people from protection under Title IX, which forbids, discrimination based on, sex and gender. The memo reads, the sex listed on a person's birth certificate as originally issued shall constitute definitive proof of a person's sex unless rebutted by reliable genetic evidence. Now, where should we begin unpacking this bullshit?
Well, one of the first questions I had for Deb while we were talking before you, in fact, you came in the middle of it when you came on pre-show, is that if the Trump administration, as they said, is going to go with science, what fucking science are they going to use? Because we all know that current real science basically states that sexuality, gender, etc. are on the spectrum. Or am I misinterpreting?
No, you're right. In fact, so is biological sex.
Yes. So what science are they using? Are they using Solomons and Regnerus, who have both been retracted? So don't tell me, is Trump going to tell the Health and Human Services to ignore the real science, go by our religious bullshit, because this is obviously pandering to the Reich?
Mm-hmm.
And
yep.
So I don't know what, for me, to me, when
it's called Republican science.
That's actually a nice phrase. And I purposely have disconnected from the political bullshit for, it's gone on 2 weeks now, and got myself into the poop cult. It's been kind of fun, actually, but and this was the first thing that I saw. I've been slowly weaning back in, just because, my brain just can't take it all anymore. So I can imagine what, people that I know that are transgender, what they're going through. Obviously you and Kelly and Riss, and we can name
lots of folks.
Yeah, pretty much our whole friends list. But it's so what science are they basing it on? From everything I have read up to this point, it has all pointed to that being male or being female is not so binary.
And it's not so defined either.
Yeah, and it's not defined either. So that brings up the question of, too, okay, so what science are they basing on? It also brings up, so if we go by the whole sex is not, your male femaleness is not binary, then when should that be determined? And should it be something that the individual, and this is an argument they use with intersex.
What I don't get, what I don't get is, what fucking difference does it make what gender someone is in terms of even government services? Why does it matter?
Exactly.
I don't get, a human is a human, and they deserve to have the same things that every other human has. So why the fuck does it matter? I don't get it.
Well, Deb, let me tell you a little bit about the United States.
Okay.
First of all, I think just that phrase, "this is the United States," should pretty much sum it up. I know that up in Canada, y'all have y'all's, religious fundamentalists, just like everywhere else. But here they have, more of a stronghold on the political system.
Yeah.
And as we've seen with climate change and sexuality and whatever else, sorry, I just had to laugh at the kitty saying, "Come look at my butthole, mama." As we've seen with the religious Reich, to borrow a phrase from Beth, they love to pick and choose which science backs up their own agenda. Like, don't chew on mommy's hairpiece.
You're being a distraction. Go
beat up your sister.
The big kitties.
Yep. Anyways, what was I saying? Oh yeah, like we've seen with gender and biological sex. Now, they keep going because the Bible says, God made them male and female. Well, that settles it then. Bible says it, I believe it, that settles it. However, first of all, I just want to give a little bit about the science behind gender identity.
Oh, yes.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I'm actually have some notes right here because I'm writing an article for Rewire News all about this subject. There's a lot of recent studies that show that trans people's brain patterns match their gender identities, regardless of genitalia. Study after study. There was a recent one I think came out earlier this year. It was published on Science Daily. And where they did MRI scans on trans youth, and they found that the trans boys and the cisgender boys both have similar brain patterns, and same thing with cis girls and trans girls. And like I said, there's a bunch of other different studies that basically says the exact same thing. As far as how this starts, not really quite sure as far as I know, but apparently, gender identity can develop, prenatally, and, many things can influence, the environment of the womb, and, the environment of the womb influences, level of hormones and chemicals that go into the development of a fetus. That's a quote by Amy Ellis Nutt, a journalist who wrote a book called Becoming Nicole, The Transformation of an American Family. So, as I like to say, in the immortal words of Lady Gaga, trans people are pretty much born this way, as far as we know. And as far as biological sex, as we talked about earlier, that's not a strict binary either. For example, there's intersex people, which, according to the Intersex Society of North America, it's a general term used for a variety of conditions in which a person is born with a reproductive or sexual anatomy that doesn't seem to fit the typical definitions of female or male. As some examples we know is some born with both, male and female genitalia. There are some females that have a notably large clitoris, and some boys that have, a small penis and maybe a little bit of an opening around the scrotum as well.
And there are people that look like one gender externally, but have parts for another internally.
Yes. Well. Yeah, that's right. I'm sorry. What are you about to say, Beth?
I have a friend, and I'm not going to give out too much personal, but nationally known, who just recently came out as intersex. She identifies as female, but her entire life, and she's very close to my age, maybe a few years younger, I could not imagine finding out late in life, she was about 40-ish, I think, when she found out, that she was actually had both the
right,
The chromosomes, I always get them confused.
Right.
Oh, so she has XY and XX chromosomes.
Yes.
Yeah, a
And,
lot of people have that.
and it's like, and if you look at it, not to be derogatory towards her physical appearance, because I think she looks fine, but she has a much the typical, when you have that the double chromosomes like that, you do for females, you're much more huskier, you have more of a male anatomy as far as bone structure and stuff like that, so she has a very husky build. And now it's just like she's just now getting to the point where she can speak openly about it. It's like, yeah, I'm intersex, so fucking what, I'm still female. And it's like she goes, I wish I could do it over again where I could choose what I wanted to be. And that's, one of the questions I have with this. If they're going to base it on, quote, science, then it should be up to the individual to determine whether they are male and female. I mean,
yeah.
And I know that,
like I wrote a Facebook post about this a few weeks ago, and because we all know there are the assholes out there that are like, I don't care, what you think you are, because if you've got XY, you're a man. And I'm like,
Shapiro.
Thank you. Yeah. And I'm like, what do these people think they're accomplishing by saying that? Do they think that trans people are just, wow, I never thought of that. Oh, damn. I guess I better go, change my wardrobe back.
Well, I think you made a good point right at the beginning, Deb, is that what does it matter as to whether someone is male, female, trans, not trans? What does it matter? We are all
binary or not.
Yeah, we're all human, and as much as I hate to say it, it goes back to something we discussed on a previous show about the whole us versus them mentality. And if y'all think this is coming from Donald Trump's little fucking pea brain, you better get your fucking heads examined, because this has nothing to do with Trump. This is Mike Pence through and through.
Yes.
This is the influence. As much as I hate to say it, because I go back to this every fucking time, this is the Nephilim 6'4" giants, the spiritual warfare that they're still fighting, because even though the Nephilim in body were destroyed, they are under the impression that the spirit of the Nephilim still infects people of today.
Ooh, and so you've been possessed by a Nephilim, apparently.
Yeah. I mean, Chris, me, anybody we know that is different, that includes people of color. Don't think this is just a trans or a lesbian or a gay thing. This has to do with them being able to give that us versus them mentality. And this is Mike Pence written all over it.
The minute you can completely otherize someone, which is what this proposal is going to do.
Yep.
You can do that to anybody. Like once.
Oh yes.
That whole, for instance, Dr. Schloss, who's been on the show before, he posted yesterday afternoon something to the effect of, if you think that this is just about, one group of people, go back to that poem. First they came for this group.
Exactly. And Martin Niemöller's.
Yeah.
Right.
Exactly. So
actually, before we begin, I want to bring up, I don't know how much Pence is involved, but Roger Severino is definitely involved.
Yeah. Okay, he's like that guy. He sounds like an asshole.
He is. He's the, okay, you're so going to laugh at me, but he's the director of the Office for Civil Rights at the Department of Health and Human Services. But you know where I got to start from? The Heritage Foundation.
Yes, this is Heritage and the Federalist Society written all over.
Heritage Foundation and civil rights do not belong in the same paragraph.
Right, exactly. Yeah. I have an article here from The Advocate, and I'm just going to read a couple excerpts. Severino has a long history of working for far-right groups and opposing LGBTQ rights. He has opposed marriage equality defended ex-gay therapy and objected to allowing transgender people to serve in the military. Before joining HHS, he worked at the ultra-conservative Heritage Foundation. At Heritage, Severino vigorously argued against legalizing same-sex marriage and railed against accommodations for transgender individuals in school locker rooms or public bathrooms, notes a 2017 profile in The Atlantic. He has also opposed the Obama administration's interpretation of Section 1557 of the Affordable Care Act, which also considered discrimination based on gender identity or sexual orientation to be a form of sex discrimination. He and Ryan Anderson, an anti-transgender activist and author, wrote a 2016 report for the Heritage Foundation challenging such inclusive interpretation. Many people reasonably believe that maleness and femaleness are objective biological realities, they wrote, yet the regulations would label these kinds of reasonable beliefs as discriminatory, scare quotes, and seek to forbid them from being followed in the coverage or provision of healthcare services. And where have we heard that before? Oh, you know, we can't preach hate anymore because we can't preach the gospel anymore because it's gonna be right. They're gonna like throw us in jail for preaching the gospel, you know.
Like fucking Marie Osmond apparently said that last week. Like they're gonna throw us in jail for worshiping Jesus. No, if we were gonna do that, we would have done it like 50 years ago, bitch.
Go to freaking Saudi Arabia or Iran where that stuff happens.
Go to Riyadh and worship Jesus in public and see what happens.
Yeah. Well, and that's the thing is, it was a point we brought up before, is that it's not just transgenders that are going to be attacked, for lack of a better word.
Well, the first thing I thought of when I read this bullshit yesterday was if they get away with this, the next people are going to be homosexuals.
Well, that's
and bisexuals.
I mean, and this goes back to the whole origination of the Reich as we know it. So basically to the 1980s. And yes, there are roots of it even prior to that, as Morgan noted, I think it was last week. Oh, what was our interview with
Yeah, we were on Right to Reason podcast this past week.
Yeah. And it's a point she brought up is that what we know today is the Reich actually started back around the New Deal. But this whole targeting of LGBT and abortion began in the 80s. And they actually, I mean, not so much the Wedge document per se, but there are various books. I don't have it handy at the moment, but there's one book that basically lays out their strategy, and their initial strategy was targeting abortion. That kind of fell through, especially after Roe v. Wade, but it was a reaction to that ruling. Then they were like, well, okay, we'll go after, gay and lesbian rights. Well, that kind of course, fell through, but they're still battling it. So they went back to abortion for a while. That didn't really work. Now they're targeting transgender. And basically it goes to this whole otherizing. They're demonizing people that they don't think are worthy. And basically what they're doing is just they're taking away humanity of individuals. And eventually, as Steph said, it's the Martin Niemöller poem.
Well, and Tris, so let's go over what this proposal really is and what kind of impact this could definitely have, because people may well, they're just making a decree, blah blah blah. Like, this is really, really, really serious.
Okay, give me just 1 second while I bring up the New York Times article. It might. Let's see here. Excuse the dead air, folks.
And the kitten ran away. Damn it. I told him to go harass his sister.
All right. Well, let's see here. Well, I'm going to start reading a little bit from the New York Times article. A series of decisions by the Obama administration loosened the legal concept of gender in federal programs, including in education and healthcare, recognizing gender largely as an individual's choice and not determined by sex assigned at birth, as we were talking about earlier. The policy prompted fights over bathrooms, dormitories, single-sex programs, and other arenas where gender was once seen as a simple concept. Conservatives, especially evangelical Christians, were incensed. Now the Department of Health and Human Services is spearheading an effort to establish a legal definition of sex under Title IX, the federal civil rights law that bans gender discrimination in education programs that receive government financial assistance, according to a memo obtained by the New York Times. Let's see here. As far as like, okay, it says here the new definition would essentially eradicate federal recognition of the estimated 1.4 million Americans who have opted to recognize themselves surgically or otherwise as a gender other than the one they were born into. This takes a position that what the medical community understands about their patients. What people understand about themselves is irrelevant because the government disagrees, says Catherine E. Lamon, who led the Education Department's Office for Civil Rights in the Obama administration and helped write transgender guidance that is being undone. The move I'm sorry, what were you about to say?
I was going to say that's an important point, is that the government disagrees.
Yes.
Now you have to remember the religious right is intertwined with the government, i.e. Mike Pence. So basically it boils
down aren't they supposed to be like small government conservatives?
Exactly. They want a smaller government to deregulate all these other but we get to legislate what's going on in your body.
They want to regulate what's in your pants. They want to regulate what's in your guts. They want to regulate who you fuck, who's in your bathroom, who you kiss, any of that shit.
Yeah.
But environmental protections. Oh no, small government. Like
yeah. So that statement right there that you just read about the new definition is so oxymoronic that they're like, their whole premise is wrong, because you want small government. Well, if you want small government, you can't be regulating what a person does in the privacy of their own home.
With their own goddamn body.
With their own, that goes down to the whole...
I see people railing about, oh my God, you're going to let these people mutilate themselves. I'm like, do you have ear piercings? Have you, ever got your eyebrows waxed? Or...
I've had wisdom teeth removed. Is that mutilation?
Yeah.
Apparently. I mean, have you had a nose job or a boob job or any of that shit? Tummy tuck. Hell, if you've given birth, you fucked up your body. Come on, people. It's your own goddamn body. Like when people freak out about that shit, well, something could go wrong and you could get hit by a bus crossing the street tomorrow, dipshit.
Yeah.
And also, let me just, I also want to bring up, when we're talking about, the hypocrisy among these, small government conservatives, of course, they'll throw it back in our faces when we talk about, hey, I thought you all were into small government. It's like, well, yeah, we are. We don't want the government saying that marriage is something other than, between a man and a woman, or that, being a woman, means you can still have a penis. To them, that's big government, not what they're doing. It's like, no, you want big government. You do. You want to regulate what people do in their bedroom. You do. Projecting.
Exactly. But that's their whole shtick, is accuse everyone else of what you're actually doing. That's they do it constantly. And it boggles my mind that people fall for that shit. I just sit there going, no, that's what you're doing. What the fuck's wrong with you? But now the one other part that stuck out for me in this now is what does it say here? Any dispute, this is from the New York Times article, any dispute about one's sex would have to be clarified using genetic testing.
Right. That's exactly what we were saying earlier about where does that leave intersex people, and also where does that leave people who have different, chromosomes, like what we were saying earlier. What if someone has both XY and XX chromosomes, and also what about, like, you're mentioning people who, externally have, one thing but internally something else. Well, I think even Callie Wright once mentioned on the show that she has a friend who's a trans woman who went to have bottom surgery, and then they found, oh wait, there's ovaries inside, so somebody can be intersex without even knowing it. It doesn't have to be just.
There have been a number of stories of people who, they went and either had children or fathered children and thought they were completely normal, and then they had a test for something else and kind of went, oh, you got the wrong chromosomes, what? And they had no idea.
There was a case probably in the last 5 years, I'm sorry I'm not more specific, but I think it was for some type of federal position, and if I remember the story correct, they had to have some type of testing done, and basically what it came down to is this individual, and I don't remember whether they identified as male or female, but they couldn't prove who they were because the genetic test came back totally opposite from what they presented. And it turns out that she was an intersex baby. The parents chose one gender. One gender, and she was actually the other.
Yes, it was that happens.
It's a custody case. That's
Absolutely.
what it was.
And
trying to prove that her children were hers or his. I can't remember. And when they did genetic testing, they were like,
"Those aren't your kids."
And it turned out that she was what they term a chimera.
Yes. And some chimera, it depends on where you take
testing from.
So if you test their saliva, they'll have genetics of one gender, and if you test their blood, they'll have genetics of the other gender.
Yeah, and that's, I think if I remember correctly, I want to say this was about 5 years ago.
Because when you do genetic testing for parentage, they almost always do cheek swabs, the saliva.
Yeah.
But let's say, they've had blood tests their whole lives and their blood has always been whatever they expected it to be. And voila, then they have this happen and their whole lives get fucked up.
Yeah. And that's how digging into why, because it was obviously these were her kids or his kids. I can't remember the
yeah.
And so that's what led her to
discover. Well, and then so let's go back to what we were talking about, the other people who they don't know that they're intersex, right? So let's say they've been one gender their whole lives, they've been comfortable as that gender, they've never questioned it, they've married, had children, whatever, and for whatever reason, somebody comes along and said, like, let's say this goes through, and they apply for, say, an education something or a housing grant or whatever, and they say, well, my colleague over there doesn't think you look quite masculine or feminine enough, so we're going to send you for genetic testing. And it comes back that they're not who they've been their whole lives. Are they now going to be told that you have to be X gender now because, well, I don't care if you've physically given birth, you are now a man because you've got XY chromosomes, so too bad. You will pay for your prostate exam, but you can't have, say, a tubal ligation or something. Like, I just wild examples there, but you know what I mean.
Yeah, exactly.
I think what kind of drives that point home is in the article it goes, sex means a person's status as male or female based on immutable biological traits identifiable by or before birth. Well, okay, if we're going by biological traits, which would be our chromosomes, that it's like I said in the beginning, there is no binary. There's no you're female, you're male. We're all on a spectrum. I mean, I know LGBT guys, big brutes of men, you know, bodybuilders, you know, pythons the size of my thighs, but yet they're so effeminate. It's it's kind of hysterical because it's like you meet these guys, you would never know they were gay.
Well, look at the bear community.
Yeah, the bear community.
I love bears. I think bears are the most adorable guys ever, and they're just so cute and cuddly. But they're cuddly, you know.
Yeah, I mean, but you know, or we've all seen the memes of you know, relating to the bathroom bill. Well, would you want this man in your bathroom because biologically, according to your testing, he is a she. Well, dude's got more facial hair than I do.
Right? Yeah, Buck Angel. He's totally buff.
Yeah,
I think that's who the picture was. But then there's the issue that I have. I have facial hair. Okay, I've had it my entire life. I have it's basically I produce too much testosterone, and which is normal. I mean, women do produce testosterone, but we do so at a lower rate than males. I have always, my entire life, even when I used to bodybuild, I had to be careful because I used to drive mom and dad crazy because I would fucking outgrow my shirts every 3 months because I built muscle at a much higher rate than most girls my age. I still do, although now it's like totally pointless. I can build all the muscle I want and they still don't work right. But so where does that leave me?
Right, exactly.
Biologically, I have higher testosterone, so am I a male?
Let's say you're standing in line, and this has happened to cis women, where they're standing in line for the ladies' room, and somebody comes along and is like, "You don't look like a woman. Get out of line. Go to the men's room."
I've actually even up. Well, it was since I've actually moved here. I had my winter coat on. I had a ball cap on. And I mean, obviously, I'm a woman. I have a size 44 triple D. You can't miss them. Okay, even under a fucking jacket, you can't miss them. And I was directed to the men's room.
And I'd be like, "Yeah, fuck you."
I'm like,
The thing is, I'm sorry, but you shouldn't have to. I don't care if you're cis or trans or whatever. You shouldn't have to present your gender status to get in a bathroom.
Right, exactly.
And that's what they're doing. I mean, it's like they're trying to make this, you know, all-encompassing statement saying, "Oh, they're different. They should be allowed in modern society."
So I'm not familiar with this whole Title IX thing, and I'm sure there's the odd Canuck out there listening. What kind of impact does this have potentially?
I'm not sure. I did mention a couple things earlier in the article, but you know, it does mention the whole battle over bathrooms, and I actually know someone in my neighborhood, or at least my neck of the woods, I should say, that recently won a lawsuit against his school. His name is Max. He's a trans boy. He's 15, I think, 15 or 16. And yeah, the local papers haven't really talked about it much, but he's been interviewed by like Washington Post and I think mentioned in Slate magazine.
Yeah, Max's case is actually interesting. What it boils down to, if you receive money from the federal government, you cannot discriminate. End of statement.
Right.
But they're trying to go for exclusion, saying, well, the whole myth that transgenders will molest young girls in the bathroom. I believe in Max's case, he was actually accused of looking under a stall. I don't know whether there's
I don't remember that. I don't remember that too much. I just know that Max, apparently the case has basically been settled. They basically, because the Eastern Shore of Maryland's very don't ask, don't tell. If there's a big political row, it's because, like, I don't know, people are fighting over, I don't know, zoning ordinances, or whether or not a gas station should be built in a specific geological area. They don't want to. They don't want to talk about civil rights cases and stuff like that. Or if they do, they want to talk about in the, like, it's a past thing and stuff like that. And so the Talbot County School Board, I think, basically just said, you know what, let's just settle. Let's just have a settlement. And so as far as I know, Max is allowed to use the boys' bathroom and allowed to change in the boys' locker room as well. However, there's been no ruling as far as other transgender students here in the state of Maryland, right? And so if this comes up again, what's going to happen, And also, let me talk a little bit about the whole thing about, uh, surgery as well, because our good friends Callie and Marissa have both gotten their bottom surgeries done, and so I'm thinking, like, okay, if this thing passes, like, are they gonna be, like, oh, what's in your pants? It's like here it is,
the vagina.
right? But even then, they'll probably like, nah, I don't believe you. And also, a friend of mine pointed this out recently. If you change your gender marker and name legally, apparently, like, if I'm not mistaken, all of your old legal records with, your gender assigned at birth and your dead name are pretty much wiped out. And so it's like, well, how are they also going to find that out as well?
I would be surprised if they actually did that, though, and I honestly, they should. But I would be surprised if they did, because I'm thinking in terms of people who change their name for aesthetic reasons.
Oh, okay.
They have to now. They used to. I don't know if people still do now, but I know they used to actually have to put an ad in the paper.
Right. They gotta do now.
I'm this person named so and so is now known as this person named so and so, and if there are any creditors out there who believe that so and so owes money, this is their name now. Blah blah blah, kind of thing. So while they couldn't, I'm sure that they couldn't require a trans person to do that due to discrimination issues. I would see them wanting to keep, like, say, your tax records from 20 years ago or whatever in the dead name for those reasons. I would be happy to be wrong about that, though. But
well, I think what it comes down to is, from a legal standpoint, i.e. the IRS here in the States, your social security number is what you are identified by. That will never change unless you do it fraudulently. So the IRS would be able to track you by your social. Your dead name does stay on record per se, but it's archived. So
okay.
Like, for example, in New York, when I gave up my license, my driver information after 7 years is removed from the system and put in an archive, an actual physical archive, not a computer archive. So, like, if I needed to prove something from back when I drove, they would actually physically have to go to the archive to pull that information out. So that's kind of what happens. Yeah, your dead name is a dead name to a degree for legal purposes, such as, if you committed a crime, let's say, like, there's no statute of limitation on murder. Not that I'm saying anybody that is a transgender would commit murder. But if you were to commit a murder and genetically they were able to prove that it was you, they can pull up that information under your dead name. So theoretically, your dead name isn't a dead name, but it is a dead name, if that makes any sense.
Yeah. I
There are some caveats, but you're getting into an area that is so blurry. I mean, as I said,
well, I think there needs to be some time and energy put into re-examining things like that and coming up with better ways of doing it. But when there are people who are just dedicated to trying to undo everything all the time, who's going to spend the resources to get things right when they're, well, we may not have to do that next year, so let's hold off on that.
Yeah. Well, and that's where, like, if you, I don't know, Tris, if you have what they call a real ID, I have to get mine. But basically, it tracks you by social security number, so that removes your name from the whole picture. I mean, this is a very simplified version of what the real ID is supposed to do. It's actually for security. But your name is inconsequential. They track you by social. That's why they tell you when you're online or doing any type of online transaction, never release your social security number. Once they have that, they have your identity.
Right.
And, you know, that's why there's such a resale value in people that are actually dead, reusing their social security numbers. But
so why can't we make it so that people get to create their own identity and you're just tracked in a non-gender manner?
That would be, I mean, as futuristic as it sounds, that is actually what some people are working for. And it's
I don't see how it would be that difficult if you've already got something like your social security number.
Yeah. Well, and that's the thing, and that comes back to the whole issue of otherizing. If we do that, if we were to go that route where gender became, you know, a non-issue, and for legal purposes we are identified by just our social security number, for example, then they cannot demonize based on a number. You don't know whether this person's male or female, but if they keep that gender binary in there, they can. You're male, you're female. That's it.
I think what it boils down to in many ways is this lazy desire to be able to categorize people on site.
Yes, yes.
That's born out of tribalism, and it is born out of a legitimate need to do that in the past. Right? And when the idea of coming across a foreign person was literally dangerous to you, that made sense.
Yes.
But we don't have that problem anymore. And I don't understand why people are so terrified of letting go of this idea of, like, I need to be able to look at someone and know exactly what I'm dealing with. That hasn't been true in centuries.
Well,
but you only get to know about someone what they allow you to know, right? And that's been like that for eons.
Well, it goes back to the biblical passage of being able to separate the wheat from the chaff, and it's all, for lack of a better word, it's all biblically based. I mean, as much as, while we are not a Christian nation, a lot of our philosophies of our leaders are. And this has always been a backdrop, to be able to separate out the spiritually pure from the spiritually impure. And this is the whole spiritual warfare bullshit that you hear about. The POTUS SHIELD program, that is a religious right movement. You know, they just did an exorcism over Kavanaugh to protect him from the hexes of witches. I mean, this is the type of tribal thinking that is still ingrained with our politics or
I
becoming
like
more
the nickname I saw going around. What was it? Whiny McRapey.
I like beer.
Yeah, I like beer a lot, man.
But I think for people like Tris and for, Callie and Riss, who we've had on the show and our friends of the show, I mean, it scares me to think that they can so easily be, quote, wiped off.
Well, and what are you gonna do? Like Tris said, with folks that have had surgery,
exactly.
and so it's like, oh well, I'm sorry that you went to all that trouble to get a vagina, but we're just gonna pretend like you have a penis again. Sorry.
Well, one of our mutual friends made a comment today, and I might be twisting this, so please excuse my mistakes. But basically, she's like, I haven't had my bottom surgery yet, and now I don't know if it's. I mean, the way I took it is, I don't know if it's even going to be worth it now. And I think you know who I'm talking about.
Mm-hmm.
But it's like, I mean, how fucking ridiculous is that? I mean,
or the people that have been scrimping and saving for years to try and get their surgery, and now the reality is that could be forbidden.
Yeah,
right.
Like, if this comes through, what's to stop people from saying, well, we've decided that that's mutilation and we're not going to allow you to do that because it's self-harm, so nah.
Right, yeah, they're gonna rework all the healthcare laws and say, what, healthcare companies, you can actually deny coverage for bottom surgery, or they'll probably call it self-mutilation or stuff like that. And also there's something else I was thinking about, but it just occurred to me, I wanted to mention it too. This whole idea of genetic testing to determine what you're assigned with at birth. I don't know. It sounds like it'll eventually lead to a new form of eugenics. It's like, we don't know, so let's test. You say you're a woman, but looks like you have XY chromosomes, so what that means.
Or as it could even be stuff like, well, we're going to do genetic testing to determine gender. And, what's the harm in testing for this, that, and the other thing? Oh, look, you're a carrier for this. Well, that means you have to be sterilized now.
Yeah.
Well, it's kind of like people that are anti-abortion, and they get asked, well, what if you were able to have a genetic test, and that genetic test showed that your fetus, whether it's male or female, is going to be gay? Would you have an abortion?
Yeah, they won't usually answer that question.
And they can't answer it. But this, I just was scrolling through my feed real quick, and I think Bridget sums it up quite well. First, it was Black Lives Matter. Black lives don't matter. Then it was children didn't matter. Then immigrants don't matter. Then sexually abused women don't matter. And now LGBTQ people not only don't matter, but transgender people will be erased.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
I mean, that's what it comes down to. It's getting rid of those that don't fit the
and
stereotype as spiritually pure.
Well, and Matt in the chat, hi Matt. He says that's what I'm afraid of, is that we will become a Christian nation. I hope not to happen.
Well,
it can't happen here. Am I right?
Well, the thing is, Matt uses Christian nation. Do you consider any of this Christian?
It depends.
This is called becoming a theocracy. This is not
better word.
This is not Christian. I'm sorry, but I was never taught, ever, in my 22 years that I was a believer, I was never taught to hate another person. I was never taught to otherize other people. Yeah, we didn't agree all the time, but we were never taught any of this. This is not Christ's teaching. This is Paul.
Yeah, well, Paul was a major dick.
Yeah, I mean, what we are seeing is the birth of theocracy. What they have over in Saudi Arabia, where President Trump is pandering to the Saudi prince to save a fucking gun deal
Yeah.
while a journalist is brutally murdered.
Mm-hmm.
But the gun deal is more fucking important, so he's keeping his mouth shut.
Yeah.
I'm sorry. That is theocracy. That has nothing to do with Christianity. We are not a Christian nation by any way,
But
shape,
a theocracy.
Well, theocracy is religiously based. It can
Yeah.
be Christian, it can be Hindu, it can be
Whatever.
Islam. Yeah, it can be. The theocracy is where the sacred text of the predominant religion becomes law. In
Yeah.
other words, if you go by those that are trying to run our country, they want the Old Testament to trump the Constitution.
Yeah.
They want to do away with the Constitution. And about 7 years ago, there were specific amendments they wanted to do away with. One being the First Amendment, one being the right for women to vote, one being the right for people of color to vote, annihilating our civil rights laws. Those were all part of their agenda, and it's coming to fruition if this memo actually goes through.
Well, and so the other thing that I've been sort of pondering, and this is why I'm glad you were able to join us, Tris, is this is gonna fuck shit up for non-binary folks. Like,
Right, exactly. Yeah. Like I'm already confused trying to navigate, this world, very, gender binary world. Because like, well, for me, when it comes to the whole bathroom thing, it's like, okay, even if I think the state of Maryland, you're protected to use whatever bathroom, matches your gender identity. But what if you're, non-binary? Which is why I usually hold it in if I'm out running errands, unless I swing by a place that has a gender neutral bathroom. Right. But not just bathrooms. What about like as far as employment discrimination or like any other form of discrimination?
Instance, let's say you were sexually harassed in the workplace, and let's say they decided, let's say it was a man, and whatever tribunal decided that you were masculine enough that it couldn't be sexual harassment.
Exactly.
Trans erasure and victim blaming both at the same time.
Yeah. Oh, they're so good at multitasking, aren't they? But like, seriously, I could just see them do, because we all know that victims of sexual abuse don't matter. So what easier way if you have a non-binary person is, well, I'm just going to decide that you're whatever gender would allow me to discount what it is you're saying.
Well, and that comes back to the whole using what somebody looks like to determine what fucking bathroom to send them to.
Exactly.
I'm sorry, but I don't consider myself.
And I have to say, there was someone named Templar in the chat.
That's what I'm responding to.
Yes, they said, of course, what you look like is going to largely determine what restroom you're going to. No.
It's like, if I wanted to go and use a men's restroom, so be it. But for somebody else to say, well, direct me. I mean, I just asked where the restrooms were. I didn't specify male or female. I thought it was blatantly obvious that I'm a female since I'm a 44 triple D. Even under a coat, you can tell. Either that or I'm really, really, really fat.
I don't think I've ever seen man boobs that big.
No. and even at my age, I'm going to be a little bit wanton here. They're kind of perky. Okay, so they don't like sag down to my knees.
No, okay. No, they definitely precede your entrance.
I mean, so even under a winter coat, and I don't wear heavy winter coats. I wear the lightest I can possibly get away with because I can't stand long sleeves. So, I mean, even in that, I mean, there's no way. I mean, what do I have to you know, it gets down to the, well, do I have to take a genetic test before I can go pee?
And like when the bathroom laws were hotly being debated a couple of years ago, like there were people who literally thought there should be someone checking genitals at the fucking.
Oh God.
Yeah.
Like,
Who was that?
okay, I'm sorry, but I'm an abuse survivor. Do you have any idea what something like that could do to somebody like me? Like,
Yeah.
I
yeah.
would freak the fuck out if somebody, especially if you really, really have to go to the washroom. And chances are, if you're going to put yourself through that, you've held it to the point that you can't anymore.
Mhm.
You know, and somebody's like, well, I have to see what your junk is. Like, fuck no.
I'd piss on the floor if that was the case.
That's exactly what I would do, because now, you know, since my strokes, I don't have complete control because only half my body works. So when I gotta go, I gotta go. This is like no holding it for me. So
Yeah.
what if you have a person, you know, in similar circumstances? I know some MS patients who have incontinent problems. I mean, you're just because they want to go to the bathroom, you want to know what fucking biological sex they are? What does that matter?
I think that all public restrooms should be made unisex, period.
Exactly. And I know a lot of the larger corporations are leaning that way.
Put in floor-to-ceiling stalls and be done with it. Men don't need urinals. I'm sorry. No, what man has a urinal at home?
Yeah.
Really? Like you can use the toilet, and for people, well, they'll pee all over the seat. Have you been to the women's room? These women that hover over the goddamn seat because they think it's too gross to sit on, they pee all over the fucking seat, okay? So don't give me that shit.
When I used to do janitorial, even in the restaurants I worked in, when we had to do the bathrooms at the end of the night, I'll tell you which bathroom was the most disgusting to do, and it wasn't the men's room.
No.
I hated cleaning the bathrooms. I still do because of my position where I am now. And because our wait staff is usually overwhelmed, you know, if one of the toilet plugs, it's up to me to go and hopefully rectify the situation. But I dread sometimes, and not where I'm at now, but when I used to work at McDonald's and BK and all them, I used to dread going into the ladies' room because you never know. I mean, the men's room, yeah, occasionally if you get a couple drunks in there, but you know, they might miss, but it's just fucking water.
What always makes me shake my head, because okay, the stupid argument they always have is, well, if there's a person who's pretending to be a woman that's not a woman and they're in the bathroom, they're just gonna molest people and children. Okay, so what you're saying is these are men who are dressing up in order to molest children, right? Oh yeah. So you want them to go to the to be in the men's room with little boys, and that doesn't matter.
Yeah.
And no one ever has an answer for, well, blah, 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 blah. No, that's if you think that many men are potential pedophiles, either you're Catholic or you're fucked in the head, and you're just sending them to molest little boys instead, because let's be honest, the average pedophile is going to take what they can get their stinking hands on.
Yeah.
Right. And I'm sorry, go right ahead.
No, go ahead.
Oh, I was just going to say that going back to Piero earlier, I remember like he tweeted something not too long ago, something along the lines of, you know, I don't care if you think of yourself as a woman or not, you're not whipping it out in front of my daughter. And I'm thinking to myself, Ben, what kind of bathrooms have you been into? Because I've shared restrooms with people of all different genders, and not once have I seen anyone's genitalia, you know?
Exactly.
Yeah. So apparently when this guy goes to the bathroom, he whips it out for show and tell before he goes to take a leak.
Glory hole, motherfuckers.
Yeah. Well,
it
goes back to what you were saying about projection, Doug.
Yes.
It really scares me to think.
I have had transphobic people that I've argued these points with who have said, if I thought I could get away with wearing a dress in the women's room so that I could ogle women, I would do it.
Yeah, and that's what it comes down to.
Because they're the fucking pervert.
Yes.
And they're angry that they don't get to be a pervert and they don't want anybody else to supposedly get away with it. That's what it boils down to. Exactly what it.
What's sad is that we have people in our government who feel that it's necessary to make legislation or regulations stipulating their perceived issues. I mean, they're obviously the ones that have problems with transgender and non-binary folk. LGBT the lesbian, gay come along with that in some degree. They're the ones that have a problem. The general public, for the most part, does not seem to. At least those that I have come across.
The thing is, okay, it's not like trans people poofed into existence 5 years ago.
Yeah, exactly.
Where the fuck do you think they've been peeing for the last few centuries, huh?
Exactly. Well, and that's the thing. And that's why, if you trace the roots, all these issues, like even like in the 70s, before Roe v. Wade, well, immediately after it, that was the rallying cry they used to consolidate their power, so to speak. Now it's the LGBT issue, as well as the whole Black Lives Matter issue. And, you know, they find these hot button issues that to the general public, not people like you and I, because we're a little bit more in tune, but to the general public, they don't care. They just want to live their lives. Like one of my friends basically said, I don't care what you do in your bedroom. I don't care that you're gay. I don't care that you're an atheist. As long as you ain't fucking with me or my family, you live your life. And that's how a majority of the folk that I know are. Now, I do have a few that go completely extreme, but they do so primarily because they know I'm the complete opposite, and I will push back. But in general, I mean, just based on my small little world here, which is a Republican stronghold, people don't care. You know? I mean, they might hem and haw, yeah, and it's like you say something like, well, where do you think they've been peeing for the last century? Then they're like, oh, yeah, probably. Okay.
Okay,
you know, and they go on.
Who's worried about sharing a bathroom with the quote wrong gender? You've already done it. Lots of times, you just didn't know it. It's
Hi,
like people.
Maddie.
Yeah, there's a Maddie in the chat room. Hi. Just like the people who were like, "Oh, I've never been around a gay person." Yes, you have.
I had somebody say
you have.
a few years ago. We'd been friends for like 20 years, and they're like, "Well, I've never been around a gay person." And I looked at them and I said, "You haven't?" I said, "How long have we known each other?" And they're like, "You're gay." I'm like, "Then a $3 bill, honey. Yeah, I'm gay." I'm like, "What the fuck?" I mean, this is how. I mean, you either have
the blinders on, and see, this is why I think that they want to be, they want to have that instant recognition, so they can like. Well, I think being gay or trans is icky, so I need to be able to visually identify somebody I think is icky, so that I don't have to be around them. Like, if you don't know who they are, how the fuck can you say that they're icky?
Exactly. Well, it's just like it's going to the whole I don't know atheist bullshit. Now, okay, it's a little bit harder to tell, especially depending on which group I'm hanging, which group of people, because I will respect their religion unless it gets to the point where they're saying stupid ass shit like all gays should be executed. Then but you would not know. Walking up to me that I am an atheist. So I can understand it. Yeah, I get a lot of assumptions based on how I walk and how I look that I'm a lesbian. I had people pegging me as a lesbian even before I came out officially, and that was like eons ago. But it's
Yeah.
like, and I said to my one friend, I said, you know, why do you think I'm gay? Well, you look it. I'm like, I said, what does looking gay or lesbian look like? I mean, how do you know? Well, you dress in sweats and t-shirts, and I'm like, I've done that for.
I know some very straight femme women that
Mm-hmm.
wear
Me
sweats
too.
all
Yeah.
the time.
I mean, it's like, honey, I haven't worn a dress in over 30 years. I'm
And
just
I've known some very quote tomboyish women who are very straight as well.
yeah.
Mm-hmm.
I
But
mean,
they just
yeah.
I mean, shit, I grew up with just a brother. I used to play fucking trucks and shit with him because that's all there was to do. I would have rather played dolls, but after he got to be about 7 years old, he refused to play with dolls anymore. So what am I going to do?
Yeah,
All right,
mean,
we'll play trucks.
I mean, this need to judge people or to otherize people based on what they look like is just it's
And
mind blowing to me because, like,
that's why I say it's laziness.
yeah,
Mm-hmm.
because it's like
Because
I have been this way for as long as I can remember. I mean, people ask me, well, when did you realize you were a lesbian? And I'm like, probably when I was about 5, if not sooner. But I said, you know, I didn't have the word for it. I didn't even have the word lesbian
exactly.
or homosexuality until I fucking reached college. And then it was like, oh, yeah.
That's
Okay.
what it is.
Yeah. I was like, I didn't see anything wrong with it.
Just that's who you're attracted to.
Yeah, I just like, oh, yeah, she's, you know, I like her. But I didn't, you know, but I was never, ever really attracted to men to the point where I would want to date them or be sexually intimate.
And the folks I know who realized that they were quote different young at a young age and were not forced to try and be something they weren't
Mm-hmm.
have virtually every one of them I know of has said I have never ever been attracted to the opposite gender.
Yeah.
Like never. And in fact, one of my friends I went to university with, he said like, you know, women like to have sex with a woman. Like it was just gross to him. And I was like, okay, dude, whatever. Yeah. And he even one of our friends at the time, and I mean this is 20 odd years ago, she said, oh, I don't believe that you couldn't be aroused by kissing a woman. So he kissed her like really hard, and he was like, meh.
And that's what I was like. I think the whole like you brought up the ick factor, and
Yes.
it's like I know in conversations I've had, and Tris, you might have experienced this as well. Is that any conversation always devolves into what the fuck do you do in bed?
Mm.
And I'm like,
Mhm.
same thing you do?
Right.
Okay,
Which
great.
one's the man?
Yeah, which one's the man? I'm like, there is no.
That's the point.
As a straight woman, I have never had anyone ask me how do I have sex.
Exactly, and that's what it boils down to.
So why should you ask anyone else?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, why? I mean, and if you listen to the religious right arguments, if you break it down to brass tacks, it always comes down to is what do you do in bed?
Mm-hmm.
Or the one that gets me is the gay agenda, and we can transliterate that into the transgender agenda. I'm like, would someone fill me in on what that exactly is? My whole agenda is getting money to pay my bills.
Well, my agenda usually starts with making myself a cup of coffee, then breakfast, Let's see
My
here.
name is
Getting
scrounging up enough.
dressed, maybe have
Yeah.
a shower, you know.
Right.
It's
Oh
like-
shoot! I gotta also walk the dogs too. That's part of my gay agenda.
They're always attaching shit that like for me, mine is usually scrounging enough money to buy a rock star in the morning to wake up, whatever my morning actually is. But it's like usually I go down to work and charge one. But it's like I've been a lesbian for we'll say an out lesbian for 30-odd years. Okay, so that takes me till I was about 18, 19. And it's like, in all that time, I'm like, what the fuck is this agenda? Because I sure as hell don't know what it is.
I was going to say, whoever's in charge of disseminating the agenda really sucks, because I've never met a gay person who got the memo.
Oh, Matt has a perfect comeback. Then we need to start asking them what they do in bed.
I'm okay with that. If someone wants to know, I may or may not answer depending on who they are, but you know.
There's actually a meme floating around of like, you know, somebody approaching a straight couple and going, okay, which one's the sub and which one's the dom?
Yeah. It's like, where I see memos
walk up to some couple and be like, so do you guys like reverse cowgirl or just style? Like,
and if the ramifications of this memo weren't so dire, and it makes, I mean, this is a rude awakening for weaning yourself back into the political scene, because as I said, I've kind of taken a break because it's taking a toll on me mentally. It's like, wow, this is a hell of a thing, because it just makes me, I guess, tremble. Would be to think that my friends, people like Tris, Kelly, Riss, Robin, you name
it. I just made Maddie blow soda all out her nose.
Ouchie.
Cowgirl.
Oh,
I'm sorry.
Painful.
And she's at work too.
Oh, Jesus, Maddie.
I hope I didn't ruin any lab experiments that were going on. Sorry.
That's okay, but yeah, it just makes me fear for their future.
Yeah,
because it's like, okay, as an atheist and as a lesbian, well, yeah, I'm concerned about some of the bullshit as far as my lifestyle is concerned. It's like
it's not on the same level yet.
No, it's not, because it's like this is an actual Hitler-like attempt to eradicate people.
It's fascism. It is utter fascism, and it's heading towards things like eugenics and like that. Because so let's say, you know, we're already having an excuse to do genetic testing here, right? Because we won't. But what you should have in your pants, regardless of what you do have in your pants. We want to know what God put there, kind of shit. So we want to do genetic. Like I said before, what's to say they're not going to start testing for other shit because they can? Because we've already got your genetic material. So what's another couple of tests for this or that?
Well, and that was the thing about the whole. Well, genetic testing as the whole, if you find it, you know, if you, irregardless of the abortion debate, was if you found out that your child had Down syndrome, or your child turned out to be LGBT or Q, or, I mean, what would you do if they could genetically test your fetus? And, you know, this goes, at the root of this is white supremacy. Which is, if you take it back to its brass tacks, and I'm sorry to reiterate this point, but it goes back to biblical justification, because white supremacy, some forms, not all, are biblically based. The Ku Klux Klan was a Christian organization. You go back into their history, and they are advertised as a Christian organization.
And I don't know that many people are aware, but in the 1920s and 30s, the US actually was very active in the eugenics movements.
Yes, and that, believe it or not, is where Hitler got his ideas
From America.
was from America. And this is, take out the whole Margaret Sanger issue of the abortion debate, but eugenics was part of our history. So what part of Make America Great do you want?
Yeah.
Is that what you want?
Sorry, Tris, go ahead.
No, I was just pretty much agreeing with you, saying, yeah, I think that's basically what the Trump supporters mean when they say "Make America Great Again." There's like, make great again for us, us good white people,
Yeah. Well, please tell me, and I'm not eliminating all the good that has happened in our country, but please tell me, when were we great? In the 230 odd years we have been existing.
Can I answer as a non-American? Never.
Yeah, exactly. For the 237, if I did my math correctly in my head, of those 237 years, 216 of them, we have been at war or in warlike conflicts. We have a history of slavery. We have a history of discrimination. Some form. I'm sorry, but our country as a whole, civil rights wise, has not been great.
Right.
We still have slavery, if you want to take it to an extreme, with minimum wage. Okay, that's a whole nother discussion, but we have never been, from a civil rights perspective, a great nation. Has any nation been? Maybe Sweden. It's iffy. So this is kind of ingrained in us. I mean, going back millennia.
Before anybody says anything, Canada sucks when it comes to our Indigenous people.
It's the universal thing.
We suck. I think, like right now, we might even suck worse than Americans.
Well, okay.
Put it this way, Tris, where you see a lot of racism and law enforcement violence and whatnot directed at Black people. It's directed at Indigenous people in Canada.
Oh, yeah. I think Godless Mom told me that a couple of weeks ago when I had her on the show. We talked a lot about criminal justice system as well. Yes. And also, sorry to jump subjects, as far as to answer the question you did in chat. I think in a couple minutes I will be heading off to go into bed, but yes, still, thanks for inviting me. It's been a blast.
Yeah. Now, is there anything else that you wanted to mention or cover before you leave us, Tris?
I think that pretty much covers it. If anybody wants to follow me online, of course, they can always check out By Any Means podcast, and that's Bi spelled B-I, and the Bi Skeptical podcast. And if you follow me on Twitter, my handle is Tris Mamone, and that's where you'll find, either me ranting about whatever, or also links to my journalism articles. So when they go online.
Yeah, so you've got one coming out on this topic in the next days then, yeah?
Yep.
Okay, and what publication was that again?
Rewire News.
Okay. Excellent. Well, thank you so much. I know Tuesday is kind of short notice, but we appreciate
no problem.
One thing before you go, Tris. How can we, as allies, what can we do? Is there anything we can do besides vote?
Well, gosh, I don't have a definite list. The only things I can think of are talk to, local officials, because, cis privilege is definitely a thing, and I'm pretty sure that the people who have the power to legislate things like this are more likely to listen to you than they are to me. It's a shame, but it's true. Just like when it comes to racism, my fellow white people are probably they'll listen to me a lot more than, black people who've been going through this shit since forever. So that's one thing. And I'm pretty sure I'll think of other things as well, but that's definitely a start.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. I actually, I think Maddie posted, I could be wrong, but it was almost like a meme flyer of ways that you could be a good trans ally.
Yeah, I think she did.
Yes, I'm blaming Maddie anyway, so there you go. But one of the things that I remember, it said, sometimes if you're an ally, you have to stand beside your trans friend. Sometimes you might have to stand in front of them, meaning run interference and maybe help protect them. And sometimes you got to stand behind them and make sure that they get to speak, because they're the ones that understand what's going on more than you do.
I think for me, the listening part is important.
Oh, yes.
I can't speak for you.
Right.
Yeah.
You as an example, obviously. But I can listen to what your concerns are. And I think having as many trans friends on my Facebook friends list, and I do know some in person actually here in town, listening to their concerns is what's important than figuring out how the hell can I help.
Right.
Because empathy comes from being able to kind of understand someone else's experience, and how are you going to understand their experience if you don't listen to what that experience is?
Yeah,
exactly.
Talk over
them. So thank you so much, Tris. And Maddie says she always loves listening to Tris.
Yeah. Thanks again for having me.
You're very welcome. Now you go and get some rest and cuddle the doggos.
Alrighty, I will. Bye-bye.
I will kiss the kitten for you later. Oh, goodness. Good night. But, people might say, well, you're in Canada, it doesn't affect you, blah, blah, blah. Okay, we have fucking Doug Ford.
Exactly.
And I can just see him trying to pull shit like this.
Well,
now, it's very unlikely he would get that to pass right now, because our protection laws are very strict.
Yeah.
But
well, you don't have enough nut jobs in power either. Like pretty much, and when I say Trump, I mean the entire administration.
Yeah.
You have theocrats left and right, and basically what Trump has been able to do is elect federal judges, not just the Supreme Court, to get judges that think the same way that the theocrats do. And as Tris mentioned in the beginning, this all goes back to the Heritage Foundation and to some degree the Federalist Society. I wish Morgan was here, because she knows more about this than I do. But these people are the ones choosing our judges. Okay, not President Trump. The theocrats on the right are the ones, and I'm not talking your everyday so-called theocrat. I'm not lumping all Christians into one category. In a sense, I am, but I'm not. I'm talking about your ultra extreme right wing. The people like Mike Pence. They're trying to diminish his capacity as far as being the face of, but he's still in the lead. I mean, yes, we have Michelle Bachmann, Sarah Palin, Rick Perry, all the other, people, but they're the ones in power. They're the ones making policy. Like the Queen in England, Trump is a fucking figurehead. Yes, things do have to.
He's too narcissistic to really care about these religious-based issues.
Yeah, he's going to do whatever he is going to do to remain in power, even though
he just likes being in power and he gets off on it. That's all it is.
Yeah, I mean, for him,
he doesn't have a greater agenda other than do shit that Trump likes.
Yeah, his agenda is me, and this is why the Robert Mueller investigation is so important, because you will see my whole kind of hope, if you want to call it that, is that when push comes to shove, he's going to turn on his kids. If his kids think they're safe because they're his kids, they got another thing coming, because Trump don't give a shit.
He'd throw anybody under the bus.
Yeah, and that includes his kids. So, I mean, Trump is all out for Trump.
He might save Ivanka, maybe.
Well, yeah, maybe. But
only because yeah.
Yeah, we won't go there. But that's the thing. I mean, so Trump really is a non-issue. This is the other people in power.
Oh, totally. And I mean, they've infiltrated, like, when people talk about who's sort of in line for the presidency, and you look at that, they're all fucking theocratic assholes.
Yes.
You've got Pence, and then I know Ryan is supposedly retiring, but he's one of those fuckers. And who would get to be speaker next then when he's gone?
Yeah, I mean, right now, I mean, hopefully, the blue wave is a real thing, and it's just not us on the left patting our own heads, but it goes down to, if we don't put a stop to this, we are in for a buttload of hurt. And if those of us that happen to be, white, if you think we're safe, fuck no. If you're the wrong kind of believer, guess what? You're going to the gallows too. And this is, something I've argued for years now, is that just because you believe doesn't mean you're safe.
Because eventually, what happens when this kind of tribalism is allowed to run rampant, the in group gets smaller and smaller
and
it's
smaller.
It's like the Pink Floyd song, that one looks Jewish, and that one's got spots, and that one, he just don't look right to me.
And that's what it's going to come down to, because we've already seen some fracturing within the Reich between the Catholics and the evangelical Christians. We've already seen some fracturing between the Mormons and the Christians. The whole example I give about Mitt Romney with his election, Billy Graham calling it a cult, and then the day he won the nomination for the Republican Party, that disappeared off his website.
Oh no, that's not a cult. No.
Yeah,
well, and it's the same thing as when you talk to some theist who's a quote Christian, and there's 2 point whatever billion Christians in the world. And that, because that suits their purpose to show that they have power and that they're numerous and whatever. But then if you talk to them, and if, let's say, you say, well, there's a joke out there. It's like, I met somebody on the train, and it's like, oh, I'm a Christian. Well, so am I. Well, I'm a Baptist. Well, so am I. I have Southern Convention. Well, so am I. And blah, blah. And then it gets to like one minuscule thing that they disagree on, and they're like, you heathen bastard, burn in hell. Like, and that's how it goes.
It's just like with Catholicism. There's a meme very similar to that one. Well, I'm a Christian, so am I, blah, blah, blah. And then it comes, well, I'm Roman Catholic. Oh, you're not a Christian.
Yeah. And what they don't understand is there goes like over 1 billion of them right out the window.
Yeah, they're 2.3 billion now, just became about 500,000 or 500. Yeah. I can't do math.
Whatever.
In my head. But yeah, you take out 1.6 billion Catholics, and guess what? You're smaller than
atheists, probably.
Yeah. I mean, my numbers are probably way off, so don't quote my numbers. But yeah, when it suits their purpose, they're great. When it comes down to brass tacks, so wrong kind of Christian, and that's like,
and they will throw each other under the bus in a heartbeat because you don't worship Jesus the right way.
Yeah.
And
Well, it's like
Maddie says her pastor used to tell that joke. Ironically, he was very divisive.
yeah.
Divisive. Yeah.
Right. Well, it comes down to, even though I said I'm not lumping all Christians, in actuality, I am, because I have a friend who's very liberal Christian. But it's like, oh, well, my church doesn't teach that about LGBT folk. And I'm like, but you call yourself a Christian. I'm like, how can you do that? It goes back to my argument. There is no such thing as a moderate Muslim or Christian.
Yep.
If you claim Christianity, regardless of whether it's Paul's teaching or Christ, then you are part of the problem. I don't care how liberal your church is.
That's right.
You're still claiming a faith that is actively, granted, might not be your church, but your faith is actively preaching for persecution of others.
That's right.
And it doesn't necessarily, it includes anybody that's a other.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, and that's the thing, and they don't get that. It's just like with the whole pedophilia scandal within the Catholic Church. It's like, how can you
money? You're complicit.
Exactly. And by tithing to the church, whether you're Catholic, with the pedophilia scandal, or you're tithing to the church, whether you're a liberal Christian, that money is still in some way, shape, or form is going towards discrimination, because your head church, your denomination's head office, may have completely different views than you. You ask somebody what their church believes, and 99% of them cannot tell you. I did not know.
No, sorry. Go ahead. Go ahead. Finish your thought.
I was going to say, when I was a ministerial student, I did not know that my church, I was a Missouri Synod Lutheran. I did not know that the Missouri Synod, the bigwigs, I can't think of the word, were against female preachers. But my church, my personal home church that I grew up in, that my mother went to when she was a child, that's how old this church is, okay, didn't believe that.
So you would have gone through and become ordained only to find out that no one in your convention other than your own church would have hired you.
Basically, that's what it boils down to. But you ask anybody what their convention, or whatever you want to call it, believes, they cannot tell you. They don't know what their churches preach or believe. They know what their individual churches do, but that's it.
Well, look at Greta Vosper, right? Her actual church has said, we accept you as an atheist. We believe that you're doing, giving us what we need as a community, even as an atheist, and we're okay with that. And the board on the United Church of Canada is doing everything they can to get rid of her because she doesn't jive with what they say.
Yeah. Well, it's like Skeptical Thinker says in chat, I know way more about, excuse me, I'm going to burp, JWs now that I'm out than when I was in. And I paraphrase.
Because when you're in, you don't have time to think.
Yeah, and they don't want you to. And this is what, going back to our initial story, as far as, wiping out the transgenders, especially in educational reforms, this is what makes it important. They're dumbing down, the constituents. They don't want this inclusiveness, because if transgender folk or LGBT folk, LGBT folk in general, learn like the rest of us, they're going to learn that, oh, we have fucking rights. This is all dumbing down of the population.
Yep.
And this is what, while they're presenting it as a, quote, non-religious issue, this is very religious. And it goes, back to what Matt just said, religion is evil. This is the influence of religion, and it doesn't necessarily have to be Christianity.
You can't justify what they're proposing any other way.
Exactly.
Like when they're talking about excuse me, sorry, use science. Like, no, it's not fucking science. We've been over why that is, but it's not fucking science. You saying it's science doesn't mean it's fucking science. So that's like you saying, intelligent design is science. Fuck you. No, it's not.
Yeah.
Oh, just.
Well, it's like I said in the beginning. What science are they going to use to justify this bill? Because the real science, says that,
Okay.
gender is.
Sorry, skeptical thinker Shelley. Hi, Shelley.
Yes. It's but yeah, it's just like what science are you using? Because quote real science is saying that it's a spectrum. There is no binary male or female.
Exactly.
Yeah, you might have a dick, but that don't mean you're male. You might have a vajayjay. That don't mean you're female.
Realistically, all those things mean is it dictates how you would procreate if and when you decided you wanted to procreate. That's all that really
that's all it does.
Determines. So it's like, okay, so do you get the shitty job or the have fun and go to sleep job?
Yeah. It's like it's just mind-blowing that these alleged Christians are so quick to otherize LGBT folk, especially currently the T part. I mean, it's like, yeah, I've dealt with this my entire life. I don't really give a flying fuck. If you don't like me, tough shit. You know what? Yeah. I could really care less. I have my own little world here on my computer, and I'm perfectly content. But then I look at people, like Tris, like Chris, like Haley, etc., 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 that, literally their lives depend on being.
Well, how would any of these assholes like it if somebody just went up to them and said, you know what, I just don't think you should exist?
That's exactly what they're saying. And how is that not?
I don't like how you look or how you act. So I just think that, you should go be in a hole somewhere and not exist. So I'm just
exactly.
I wanted you to know that. Like, the fuck?
And how is that not Hitler-like?
It's very much.
I mean,
very much.
I was scrolling through my feed earlier, and there was an article, and I didn't catch, and I can't find it now, of course, that basically was comparing this to Hitler. And it's like, so people are beginning to see the parallels.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, it's like, how can anybody in their right mind consider this a proper thing to do? I mean, it's just like, how can any woman be a Republican? How can any LGBT folks support Donald Trump? But yet there still are. And it's like, barring all of Trump's other bullshit like Stormy Daniels, etc., he lost me the second he said grab him by the pussy.
Oh, fuck yeah.
I mean, when that happened, all bets were off. I was willing up to that point to give him a chance. But it comes down to is that he lost me personally at grab him by the pussy. Because that right there tells me he could give two flying fucks about any of us but himself.
Yeah.
And, whether you want to say it's because, he's a rich elite, I personally don't think he has a dime. I think
it's all show.
So, yeah, he markets himself well. And because he has the perception.
If he really had the amount of money that he says he has, then why would he even bother taking his presidential salary, which is like pocket change?
Yeah.
If that would be, like, well, he could have made a big show about, well, I'm so rich, I don't even need to get paid for this job. Here, have it. Well,
allegedly, and I don't know if there's any truth to this. I know he did with his first quote paycheck. He donated it, But if he really wants to put his money where his mouth is, he's such a grand ally of the LGBT community. Donate your fucking salary to the LGBT folk.
Yeah.
But you'll never see
Or
that.
you know what? Even, every I don't know how often they pay him, once a month or once a year or whatever. Whenever you get paid, picks like, okay, let's give this month's pay to Flint. And let's give this month's pay to Puerto Rico. And let's give this month's pay to Florida. And, this month's pay we'll give to LGBT. And this month's we'll give it to, a black charity. Like,
yeah.
Why not?
And if you notice, I mean, Puerto Rico, the Robert Mueller investigation, all the important Flint, all the important shit has been pushed on the back burner by this bullshit. And this should not be happening. Not in today's day and age.
And the worst part is we can't afford to not pay attention to it, though. Mm-hmm. Because the consequences are just as dire as all the other shit that he's pulling.
Yeah, and this is why, I mean, part of the reason why I had to take a break was that it was like, holy fuck. I mean, if anything else goes wrong, I mean, you can only take so much.
Yeah.
And it's like one controversy after another. And there's a reason for it, because he wants to distract from what, the quote important issues. Not that LGBT issues aren't important, but he wants to distract from issues that affect him personally. And, as Matt says, we're part of a community, the LGBT, we're part of a community. And it affects all of us in some way.
Mm-hmm.
And but that should not be the case if one is, just being human. I mean, he is so, narcissistic, so sociopathic, and the people that, are clinging to his, quote, power are, of that ilk, that their humanity has disappeared. I'm sorry, Mike Pence is not human to me. People that are associated with the Heritage Fund, Ryan T. Anderson, John Corvino debates Ryan quite a bit. John is a philosophy, professor out of Michigan. He has a Facebook page, John Corvino, if you guys are interested. He debates Ryan on these issues. In fact, I have their book. It's out of my reach right now, but
And Shelley says, is this how revolutions start? Unfortunately, yes.
Yes, exactly. But you got to remember, this is what the Reich wants. They want another civil war because they think they're going to win. They think if we win, then we can implement our agenda. And that's what makes something like this memo so dangerous.
Keep in mind, for them, like, let's say they start a civil war and it escalates to like some kind of nuclear shit. They don't care because they think that'll bring Jesus back sooner.
Exactly. And in my opinion, if it were to escalate to that, and this is a big if, Donald Trump would not hesitate to drop a nuclear bomb on our own citizens.
No, I don't think he would either. Because he would say they were bad hombres or some shit.
Yes, exactly. And that's why, I mean, yeah, some folk might think, well, okay, yeah, this is a really shitty issue, but it's not that big of a deal. It's a big deal because going back to Martin Niemöller, and that happens to be one of my favorite bits, it's not just going to be transgender folks. It's going to go to the people of color. Then it's going to go to folks that are different.
It absolutely is, because they're already, look at him mocking disabled people. Look at him mocking sexual assault victims. Mm-hmm. It is every time I hear about a Trump rally, I think about that scene from Pink Floyd's The Wall.
Yeah.
Get him up against the wall. And he has thrown people out of these rallies for speaking up. Like there was one a few months ago. It might have even been during the election. I'm not sure, but I just remember it was a disabled child and their mother,
Yep.
who were there to speak up against the Trump medical policies, and Trump threw them out.
Yeah.
And like stopped what he was doing and pointed them out and said, get rid of them.
Yeah.
And that's the exact same mentality as every dystopian, fascist fantasy movie I've ever seen. And that's what's so fucking scary is that people, oh, well, it can't happen here. It fucking is.
Yeah. Well, and that's the thing is, Mesa, they are trying to wipe us out. I wouldn't doubt it if that happened. And the only thing I can say in response to that is hopefully, and I'm pretty sure about that, there's enough people that do care.
Yeah.
That it won't happen. Yeah, it's going to be a bumpy road, and we're going to go through some shit. And I'm not just, as I said, not just LGBT folk, but people of color, etc., etc. Hopefully, there's enough people that really do care, that don't identify with this ultra extreme.
Yeah. I think so. Shelley says what terrifies her is that he has throngs of people following him that don't care or are unable to see him for what he is. I think that Shelley, they are starting to, simply because there are all kinds of people, and there's a meme that was going around that kind of sums it up, where it's like a MAGA hat person, and they're saying, well, I just wanted to get rid of the gays and the blacks and the Mexicans and all that, but I didn't want to lose my health care.
Exactly. And that's what it comes down to, because a lot of his
when the coal jobs are obviously not coming back, and when more of those industries start to shut down, when people are losing their Medicare, when like that woman who voted for Trump and then her husband got deported like the next week, when more of that shit starts happening, hopefully he will lose, like, his approval ratings already like lowest on record. So the hope is that the idiot squad will realize that they're fucking themselves over. We can only hope, at least.
Well, there was a, going back to like some of the memes, there was one, I don't remember if it was a meme or an article, but basically this woman voted for Trump, and like her husband got deported, but there was this another woman that was like, well, I'm not going to lose my ACA. They're getting rid of Obamacare. Going back to, she didn't know the difference. But then there was a gentleman, and I think it was a forum they had on, I want to say CNN. I mean, I only saw clips of it, so I didn't actually watch the show while it was going on. But basically, he lost his not his health care. What did he lose? He lost something, or a threat of losing his health care. He's like, well, I voted for Trump because I thought he would be different, but the fact that I'm losing my health care, or could lose my health care, is really concerning. I would not vote for him another time, because and that's the thing, they don't know. They think that he was this wind of,
because he tells it like it is, that he's actually telling the truth, and hopefully they're starting to figure out, no, he lies more than he breathes.
Yeah, I mean, pretty much I've come to the conclusion is that if he's opening his mouth, he's most likely lying, because pretty much everything out of his mouth is a lie. And his, I mean, if the rumors are true that he's paying for his audience, at these rallies, his actual base support is not as large as they like to make it out to be. I don't know if there's any truth to it. I mean, I don't think they could really prove it any one way or another. I just find that people that nonchalantly support him and his administration are just idiots to begin with. I mean, it's just like how I mean, I asked one person the other day, how has any of Trump's policies benefited you? I said, what policies specifically? I'm like, and as an addendum, I added, what policies has he passed? And he's like, oh, you did this. I said, no, those were executive orders. Those weren't legislation. In other words, so the next president can change all that with a stroke of a pen, just like he did. As far as our domestic policy, he has done nothing. He is riding on the coattails of stuff that President Obama brought to fruition. Yes, there has been some increase, which is normal. It's still on that upward trend, but we've had some downward trends in there as well. That's just the way the economy goes. If you think, like, his whole tax thing, oh, yeah, people will see raises in their check. Yeah, I got a whole 72-cent raise. And I can't figure out yet if it's because I'm working more hours
or because of the quote tax break,
or because of the tax break, because it's like because I have two different.
If you had your own private jet, you'd be rolling in the dough.
I hate flying.
Okay, what was it? Oh, or was it people with yachts that got a tax break?
No, private jets.
It was private jets. Okay, well, I tried to get you a yacht. Sorry.
Yeah, I don't like sailing. I get motion sickness, so.
Okay. Well, we got weed for that up here.
I can't smoke weed. I'm bipolar.
I know.
That's what kills me. Everybody asks me about this, so, in general here about weed smoking. It's like, I can't smoke this shit. I'm bipolar. You want me to go psychotic on you?
Yep.
I mean, for years we couldn't figure out why, when I was initially diagnosed with bipolar, why I wasn't stabilizing on my medication. And I smoked back then. I smoked basically for pain management because I have severe degenerative disease in my joints from playing hockey for 26 years. So I used it for pain management. And one day, just out of the blue, my psych nurse at the time goes, "Do you smoke pot?" And I'm like, "Yeah, every day." And we were like, "That's why your meds aren't working," because in some bipolars, not all, basically it does the opposite of what it wants. You want it to do, like, stabilize your. I have an issue with mania, which can go into psychotic tendencies, and we couldn't figure out why I couldn't get him under control. And probably within 9 months of quitting smoking pot, I was fine.
Yeah.
I mean, relative.
Shelly says, oh, sure, rub it in, Deb. Shelly, come on up here and I will get you some weed and you can smoke it all you like. So there you go.
Just don't cross the border until
don't try and take it home with you, but you can come up here and I'll get you some weed and you can have some fun. Okay?
Yes, man, I'm a hockey girl. I played for 26 years at a women's league. I also played men's league up until I was about 15.
Ooh, Shelly's looking into it. Coming up here.
Hey, stop at the aquarium and pick me up. Wait, I got to get my passport first.
Yeah. Now, I don't know if you saw the beginning of the show, Shelly, but I don't really smoke weed myself. I'm not really into it, but I know loads and loads of people who do. So I'm, and it's legal, so I can just go buy some. So there you go. Come on up.
Maybe that's what we should do down here in the States, is legalize it everywhere. Not that, it's pretty close on a statewide, but you can still get busted under federal law, even in states that it's legalized. But it's like, maybe we should all just get fucking stoned.
You should. Yeah.
I do kind of miss it.
Oh, hey. I wonder what would happen if somebody managed to, like, start like a big weed fire next to your Congress, like your government building there, and just like pipe weed smoke in through the whole building while they're sitting and just stone them all.
It sounds like a good idea, but then again, knowing these guys, I'd be really scared of the outcome.
Oh, no. But then what you do is, once they're all stoned, you release an army of journalists and photographers in the halls, and they start videoing everything these assholes are doing.
Yeah.
And then later it's like, oh, really? You want lobby money? Well, what about if I told them what you did here?
Yeah.
I'm just saying, but I was just thinking about there's a Blackadder episode where Blackadder owes a bunch of money to the black monks, and the Bishop of Bath and Wells is like, I'm going to stick a hot poker up your ass unless you give me this money. And so he drugs the bishop and has one of his friends do all kinds of porn stuff with him. And of course it's the 1500s, so they had an artist come and paint what was going on. and they kept the preliminary sketches, but it just made me think of that. But anyway, now I'm rambling, so I think it's time to say goodnight for the evening, because we're a little past time anyway. So
Yes.
Yeah, so tell folks where they can find you.
Easiest way is on Twitter, doing 9998. That connects to my blog. It used to connect to Facebook, but Twitter got rid of that because Facebook changed something. But you can find me on Facebook under Beth A. Hambridge. And if you send me a friend request, please say it's related to the show, or I will most likely delete you. And everybody in chat, I think, is on my friends list anyways. But for those of you listening, and just be forewarned, I post a lot. Well, I haven't been lately because I'm taking a break. A lot of political stuff. I'm still currently working on the poop cult. I'm up to Article 9, working on 9 and 10, and I have at least 6 more outlined. So, yeah, Jillian Epperly is become my focus, and she just officially yesterday is the most worded. In other words, I have over 30,000 words written about her. Second now is Carrie Rivera. So yeah, she's been the
wow.
Yeah, that's a lot.
That is a lot.
Yeah, in fact, I might be jumping back into MMS, even though Carrie Rivera is kind of sort of gone from the scene as far as MMS. It's still quite viral, and that's what we're trying to prevent with Jillian Epperly. Preventing it from people thinking, that it's like MMS that'll cure everything, where, basically you're taking in mega doses of salt. In fact, I actually have a batch of real fermented cabbage juice fermenting at the moment. But I want to...
trying to make that shit?
Oh, I ferment. I have been fermenting for probably...
Okay, so what do you use it for?
I just like it. I ferment like... cauliflower, onions. I do it for a variation of my diet because I don't eat a lot of I don't eat a lot of meat, so I'm always looking for different flavors. I don't attach any health food to it whatsoever. Okay, yeah, granted,
and you don't eat ridiculous amounts of it, obviously.
Yeah, I might have a shot. As I said, like with my stroke, my body just doesn't work like it used to, so sometimes it needs a little help. And yogurt gets expensive, so. But yeah, I like it for the flavor. It's just something different. But yeah, so I'm still writing about her. I will probably for the next month. But you can read all about that on the blog.
Cool beans. And of course, you can find me Sunday mornings at 12:05 a.m. on Holy Crap the Vlogcast. And that's at holycrapthevlogcast.com with Shujin Tribble and whatever motley crew of panelists we find are awake at that hour. You can find us Beyond the Trailer Park, folks. We just recorded an episode for the Right to Reason podcast earlier this week, so keep an eye out for that. That's the Right to Reason podcast. We had a lot of fun with Robert. Freaking him out about dominionism and stuff, because he was like, yeah, it's like very conspiracy sounding. We're like, we're not freaks like that, dude. It's okay. But yeah, definitely check that out. Yeah, as I mentioned before, I was on the last Gaytheist Manifesto episode, so do check that out. It's a heavy one, but Callie did a beautiful job, and it's definitely worth a listen, so do that. And of course, you can hear me read the Quran, so you don't have to, at www.fullquranic.com. And I think that about covers everything. So we will see you here next week. And of course, you can find Ms. Stringer. Tris mentioned their podcast, the Bi Skeptical Podcast, and she is on Twitter at Mostring, Mostring. She has an Instagram where she posts corgi pictures. Yeah, Facebook, Morgan L. Stringer, and all that fun stuff. So find her there. She should be back next week. She just had a previous engagement tonight. So Tris will mock her for it later, I'm sure. So anyway, we will see everybody back here, and night to everybody in the chat, to Matt and Shelly and Maddie and Templar if they're still around. Everybody have a good night, and we'll see you all here next week.
I know the truth and power of reason and of rational thinking, and I will use them to my advantage. I know the truth and power of educating myself and of expanding my intellectual boundaries, and I will educate myself. I know the truth and power of vanquishing ignorance, and I will do so whenever the opportunity presents itself. I know the truth and power of morality without supervision, and of true and accurate righteousness. I know the truth and power of obliterating tyranny, be it intellectual, emotional, or philosophical, and will work toward that goal whenever and however possible. I know the truth and power of human ingenuity. I know the truth and power of human compassion, and I will be mindful of the welfare of others. I know the truth and power of equality and fairness for all living things. I know the truth and power of the importance of our families, our friends, and our fellow men and women. I know the truth and power of human stewardship of our lands, our waters, and our skies, and I will try to act to preserve our environment. I know the truth and power of the sciences of mathematics, of physics, and of chemistry, and of the important role of these disciplines in understanding the workings of this cosmos. I know the truth and power of the rejection of all notions or beliefs that reside in the supernatural or the superstitious, and of those notions or beliefs that we are not supposed to be able to explain. And I know that these rejections are necessary for humankind's survival. I am a human being with a free mind, liberated from irrational influence and from unreasonable dogma.